Good evening and thanks for joining us. This is NTD Business. I'm Paul Graney. More details about the FinCEN file drop. We talked to Tom Cardamone about how these shady money transfers impact regular Americans. 7 states have ended their $300 weekly unemployment benefit, and more states are running out of funds. California plans to stop selling new gas-powered cars by 2035. Can you keep yours? And the White House celebrates companies that created jobs for American workers. They've pledged over 16 million new jobs. The Federal Reserve's corporate bond purchasing program benefited corporate executives and investors, but left workers behind. It's according to a new government report. The Fed's been buying a lot of corporate bonds since the pandemic began. The idea is to keep companies in business. It's basically like giving a company money in exchange for an IOU to be paid back in the future. But the companies that have benefited have laid off over 1 million workers since March, and over 380 of them still pay dividends to their shareholders. And about 230 have been accused of illegal conduct since 2017. It's the Fed chair's second day testifying before Congress about the government's pandemic support. Powell took issue with the report's findings. He says the Fed is taking measures to ensure it isn't favoring any particular company. He also noted that corporate bond purchases were made in the secondary market, and not directly from the companies. And the Trump administration's Lost Wages Assistance program is running out in a number of states. The program offered $300 a week for up to 6 weeks after the $600 jobless benefit lapsed in July.
A Lost Wages Assistance Program tracker shows that at least 7 states have finished paying the $300 weekly unemployment supplement. They include Arizona, Massachusetts, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, and Texas. 29 states are in various stages of dispersing the payments, while a handful are still in the processing phase. The Lost Wages Assistance Program is funded by a $44 billion grant from FEMA. It provides up to $400 per week in additional jobless benefits. $300 of that comes from federal funds, while states can offer another $100. As more states run out of funds under the program, jobless workers face the prospect of no more federal aid. Congress and White House officials remain locked in a stalemate over more stimulus measures. According to Labor Department figures, tens of millions of American workers continue to collect unemployment in all programs nationwide.
And the White House is honoring companies that created jobs for American workers. Ivanka Trump and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross gave awards to companies like Volkswagen that hired workers through the Pledge to America's Workers campaign.
The National Council for the American Worker led the effort. President Trump created the group in 2018.
Today, over 400 companies have signed our pledge to invest in the skills of over 16 million Americans.
The council is working with companies who pledge to provide training and educational opportunities in high-demand industries like aerospace, construction, and engineering. The Assistant Secretary of the Employment and Training Administration announced the award winners. He thanked Lockheed Martin for their efforts in fulfilling their pledge to the program.
Since making its pledge, the company has achieved nearly half of its commitment to create 8,000 new opportunities by 2023, including over 20 apprenticeship programs that range from aircraft maintenance and assemblers to software, cybersecurity, and engineering.
German carmaker Volkswagen and its U.S. operations pledge to create 15,000 jobs under the program. The company collaborates with educational institutions to provide specialized training.
All the Volkswagen Academy students are dual enrolled at Chattanooga State Community College, which handles classroom instruction of the students and offers them an associate's degree upon completion of the program.
The council also works with the much larger American Workforce Policy Advisory Board. It consists of members from the private sector, education, and state and local governments.
And the House of Representatives passed a key spending bill Tuesday evening, avoiding a potential government shutdown. It was coming in just 8 days. The resolution came after extensive negotiations between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin. The measure would fund the government through December 11th if approved by the Senate and signed by the President. After debate and compromise, the continuing resolution eventually reached an overwhelming bipartisan majority of 359 to 57. And the FinCEN file drops have rocked the financial world. Secret government documents obtained by BuzzFeed, we still don't know how they got the files, appear to show the world's biggest banks moving money for some of the world's shadiest people. Banks file these suspicious activity reports to the federal government when they're concerned about things like money laundering. But strangely, many of these banks continue to do business with these shady people anyway. But how does this affect you and your community? Who cares? Well, it's even happening here in the heart of America. I talked to Tom Cardamone about it. He's the founder of Global Financial Integrity. It works to curtail illicit financial flow. I asked him why regular Americans should be concerned.
Because this is not victimless activity. One of the ICIJ articles tells the story of a Ukrainian oligarch who made his billions, I believe, in the steel industry, created his own bank in Ukraine, created shell companies in the Caribbean and the British Virgin Islands and St. Kitts and in Delaware, and moved money from his own private bank into a bank in Cyprus that was owned by a shell company in the Caribbean. The money was then transferred from Cyprus to Delaware to Deutsche Bank, and then his shell companies purchased 22 different buildings in the United States, in several different states: Ohio, Illinois, Texas, West Virginia, New York. Some of them office buildings, some of them steel companies. The ultimate story is that many of those buildings were neglected. Taxes were not paid. Electric bills were not paid. The 4 steel companies went out of business. Hundreds of people lost their jobs. They lost their health care. Local vendors that supplied materials to these factories went unpaid. Taxes went unpaid. One person died that we know of because of poor safety regulations at one of the factories. So again, this is not victimless. Real people suffer real losses, limbs, loss of livelihood, because of the ability of these types of people, these criminal activity, to bring money into the country, $750 million worth, and with evidently no downside to them. It can really lay a whole path of destruction that can affect people's lives for the rest of their lives, actually.
Just terrible. Just terrible. You'd never think so many people could be affected and implicated in it. Tom, really appreciate the update. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Now, Wall Street's main indexes fell sharply today after data showing a cooling of U.S. business activity. Energy, already the worst performing sector this year, led the decline. Tech giants like Apple, Google parent Alphabet and Amazon, again all declining. Facebook also fell. The Dow fell over 525 points or 1.92%. S&P 500 lost nearly 79 points or 2.37%. And the Nasdaq dropped almost 331 points, that's over 3%. And Tesla shares are still falling even after the company's annual Battery Day event yesterday. They're down 10% today alone. Yikes. At the event, Elon Musk said new battery innovations will allow Tesla to make a $25,000 car by 2023. That would open up a whole new market for Tesla. But Musk did promise something similar 3 years ago. He also set the lofty goal of producing 20 million cars per year, but didn't say when he would achieve it. That's twice as many as Volkswagen or GM are making today. Tesla only made around 350,000 last year. Tesla is also suing the Trump administration for placing tariffs on products it imports from China. It wants to avoid paying 25% on screens and other technology. It calls the tariffs unlawful. Tesla says it also wants a refund plus interest on all the tariffs it's paid so far. And the governor of California is banning sales of new gas-powered cars by 2035. Piece of news for Elon. A group representing large automakers says this is not how you build successful markets.
How do you significantly reduce emissions in sectors of the economy that have stubbornly grown and not decreased? And today,
Newsom claims it will cut the state's greenhouse gases by 35%. Californians will still be able to own or sell gas-powered vehicles on the used car market. A group representing automakers such as General Motors, Toyota and Volkswagen said neither mandates nor bans build successful markets. The group noted electric vehicles account for less than 10% of new vehicle sales in California. Newsom's order also seeks to make all medium and heavy-duty trucks be 100% emission-free by 2045. And in the UK, the British government is facing pressure to come up with a plan to replace its furlough programme. It's due to expire at the end of October. The Chancellor there is weighing his options.
Chancellor Rishi Sunak is looking into ways to replace the current furlough programme, which will soon expire. He wrote on Twitter, "As our response to coronavirus adapts, tomorrow afternoon I will update the House of Commons on our plans to continue protecting jobs through the winter." Sunak's coronavirus job retention scheme launched in April. It protected a large portion of furloughed workers' earnings, but it's been very expensive. According to recent reports, Sunak is looking into replacing it with a wage subsidy plan like Germany. Their employers reduce workers' hours instead of making them redundant, and the government provides about 60% of the employee's income. The governor of the Bank of England recently said although he generally supports the Chancellor, he needs to rethink the furlough scheme going forward. Prime Minister Boris Johnson's new virus restrictions could make it even more difficult for Britain's economy. Opposition leader Keir Starmer said he supports the measures but says the government doesn't have a clear strategy, especially for replacing the furlough plan.
And will he now accept that withdrawing the furlough scheme in one fell swoop would be a disaster, and actually at complete odds with the measures he's just announced for possibly up to 6 months?
Starmer called on Johnson to work together with the Labour Party and trade unions and business associations on a replacement scheme to protect jobs and businesses.
And staying in Europe, a new survey shows that Eurozone business growth has ground to a halt this month. New virus restrictions have hit the services industry hard, but manufacturers are faring a little better.
Manufacturers are driving recovery in the Eurozone, according to the latest economy data. The closely watched PMI index for the sector jumped to 53.7 in September. That beat forecasts and was well above the key 50-point line that signifies economic expansion. Makers were boosted by a faster-than-expected rebound in demand. The new orders sub-index rose to its highest since February 2018, suggesting the manufacturing revival is set to roll on. But it looks like a two-speed economy right now, with services slamming into reverse. The index for the bloc's dominant sector sank to 47.6 this month. That was down from 50.5 and below even the most pessimistic forecast in a Reuters poll. Service providers of all kinds have been hit by a resurgence in health worries and new lockdowns in some countries and regions. Put it all together and the composite PMI number, which combines services and manufacturing, just barely clung to growth at 50.1. It was a somewhat brighter picture over in the UK, where all indexes at least stayed in positive territory. Though again, manufacturing posted a gain, while services growth slowed down.
And still to come this evening, the US House of Representatives passes the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. It aims to ensure that the US doesn't import goods made through forced labor in China's Xinjiang region. And Chevron tells staff to remove WeChat from their company phones. The company says it's complying with the president's ban. That and more after the break. U.S. oil giant Chevron becomes the first known corporate to tell employees to delete WeChat from their work phones. It's after the Trump administration's executive order to ban the social media app. Bloomberg first reported the news and Chevron confirmed it with NTD. In the statement, the company said Chevron complies with all applicable laws and regulations and, as a result of the recent U.S. executive order, has issued guidance to Chevron employees that WeChat can no longer be used on any company devices. The Bloomberg report says Chevron asked staff to remove the app by Sunday. WeChat is an all-in-one mobile app that combines messaging, social media, payment functions, and other services. It boasts more than 1 billion users globally. A U.S. judge on Sunday blocked the president's WeChat ban, but the Commerce Department says it will challenge the judge's decision. We have some details about one of the plaintiffs challenging the WeChat ban in California. The lawyer is from a law firm that has a good relationship with the Chinese Communist Party.
A California judge blocked President Trump's executive order to ban Chinese social media platform WeChat on Sunday, citing concerns over freedom of speech. The president says the app poses threats to America's national security and passes Americans' personal information to the Chinese regime. Clay Zhu, managing partner at DeHeng Law Office's Silicon Valley office, is among the group of plaintiffs who challenged the president's order. The Beijing-based company was founded as a state-owned law firm under China's Justice Ministry. It's since changed over to a private partnership and is one of the biggest law firms in China. In 2013, the firm represented former Communist Party high-flyer Bo Xilai in his corruption trial, which was seen as the trial of the century in China. In 2010, Communist leader Xi Jinping, who was vice president at the time, visited the law firm and praised its good relationships with the Chinese regime's agencies. The firm now provides legal counsels for multiple departments of the Chinese regime, state-owned companies, as well as China's Belt and Road Project. According to Chinese media reports, the law firm's founding partner was once invited to participate in the secretive Beidaihe Conference, an informal closed-door meeting among communist leaders. It's allegedly held to set the tone for major national issues of the year. The DeHeng lawyer filed a lawsuit against the WeChat ban through a nonprofit, the U.S. WeChat Users Alliance. In an open letter, the group called itself independent, adding that it does not represent WeChat, any political party, or government. The group says it has raised over $1 million from WeChat users to cover the attorney costs. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
And China's Xinjiang region again comes under the spotlight. A U.S. House bill with almost unanimous support aims to block the import of goods made through forced labor.
The House of Representatives passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act by a final vote of 406 to 3. The bill aims to ensure that goods imported into the United States from China's Xinjiang region are not made with forced labor. Republicans and Democrats alike supported the bill. They took to the House floor criticizing China's human rights record.
Millions of people who are being subjugated right now by the Chinese government. And despite international condemnation, atrocities continue in Xinjiang, and China shows no signs of changing course.
He noted a statement released by the Chinese Communist Party that defended the camps in Xinjiang, calling them vocational training centers. Republican Representative Michael McCall spoke of Beijing's hostility toward ethnic groups.
This is all part of a deliberate program by the CCP to wipe out their ethnic identity, their religion, their culture, anything that might compete with the Communist Party for their loyalties and affection.
This bill builds on the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act passed by the House in May that addressed abusive practices in the Xinjiang region.
And still to come this evening, San Diego avoids another shutdown, but just barely. We hear from a restaurant owner there who says they can't survive another closure. With many schools sticking with remote learning this year, parents are left with some tough choices: stay home or go back to work. More on that after the break. Welcome back. San Diego, California narrowly avoided another shutdown on Tuesday. The county's per capita case rate was 6.9 exactly. If it goes over 7, businesses will have to scale back operations again. For business owners, it's a relief, for now at least.
Before Tuesday's reprieve, John and Angie Weber said they wouldn't comply if ordered to stop serving inside their restaurant. They say that they have exhausted their savings and couldn't survive a third closure.
Well, there's a relief for the moment, but we know, the clock is ticking now again for another 2 weeks. And, we're under the impression that we'll be right back where we were yesterday in 2 weeks from now.
She says the lack of sleep and the stress is excruciating.
You spend all this money each time you reopen. You fill your walk-ins and hire all the staff back in, and you keep blowing through money, and then a few weeks later they shut you down again.
Right now, the restaurants in San Diego are limited to 25% capacity indoors. Co-owner John Weber says it's not enough.
I think that being allowed to operate, but allowed to operate at 25% kind of feels like, death by 1,000 cuts. It's not a sustainable business model.
Less than a month ago, San Diego was the only county in Southern California allowed to partially reopen. But if cases rise, it could be restricted again, and the state would have to wait at least 3 weeks to get back to where it is now.
Well, the start of school usually makes life for working parents easier. That, of course, is not the case this year. The pandemic has forced many working families to make tough choices.
Whoever catches this gets 100 points.
A moment of pure joy during a difficult time for this family of 6.
It's super challenging to have to juggle everything at the same time all the time.
Tracy Wells is talking about what nearly 25 million parents are experiencing right now, juggling work and remote learning. In June, Wells and her husband made the tough decision for her to go part-time so she could be present for her 3 school-aged girls and toddler son. She expects her kids won't be back in classrooms until 2021.
I was just like, I cannot maintain this for another 6 months. It's just too much. It's too intense.
40% of working parents have made changes to their employment, including 25% who have voluntarily reduced their hours, and 15% who have quit entirely. And women between 25 and 44 are almost 3 times as likely as men to leave the workforce in order to take care of children.
That results in a massive decrease in household income, which makes it more difficult for parents and families who are already in a precarious position financially, and, by the way, doesn't help very much in an economy that is currently trying to recover from staggering unemployment.
A baby and a mommy. But parents who are not looking for new work aren't counted as unemployed. Under the CARES Act, parents were eligible for unemployment if they needed to stay home with their children. But that protection expired in July.
Take over a look and go for a walk.
In just weeks, a lifeline is disappearing for Wells. The paid family leave that's helped supplement her income runs out. She says she likely can't afford to continue part-time without it.
Honestly, it's hard for me to even go there because I don't think that I could have continued at the same rhythm that I was continuing.
That's the latest business updates for today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.